Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest going all the way to San Diego, California to talk with the one, the only Dr. Negin Rajaipour. Let me tell you where we're going with this story. Imagine, if you will, going to the military, the Navy, and getting involved in the medical field, then coming out, going to more medical studies, and then realizing some shit just ain't adding up. Then you begin to question yourself and say, okay, what am I really doing this for? Because really my purpose is to help other people, to help humanity. Which method should I be taking? What should I be practicing? And more importantly, what should I be giving humanity that's going to help them in the long run? So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Dr. Najeen
Th-
Rajipur. Doctor.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for the beautiful intro. And absolutely, I agree 100%. What are we doing here? And what's really our purpose? And what are we leaving behind as our legacy? So thank you for the warm intro. I'm Dr. Negin Rajaipour. I'm a board certified family medicine physician and a executive business and wellness coach. And I'm the founder of Vita Regen Medical and the E3 method and the author of the resurrection algorithm. Um, so yeah, without further ado, I'll let you take the lead on the questions.
I got ready to land a lot of questions, so you might as well be prepared. So journey starts. The journey starts way back. Tell me what it was like going, because I'm listening to the accent. You're not American. What nationality are
Well, I am American, and but not by birth, by naturalization. So I'm originally Iranian. I was born in Tehran, Iran, during the 1978 revolution in Iran. And I immigrated to the US in 1997 at the age of 18. And actually, I landed in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a short period of time before I moved to California and started my journey by joining the military. Really, that's where my life started when I
you?
joined the Navy. So
When
it's been
you,
an exciting journey.
hey, Indiana is a great place to start the journey when
Yes.
all said and done. So let's go here. You go into the Navy at a young age. Why the Navy when you could have had Air Force, Marines, Army? Why the Navy?
Honestly, I don't have a good reason other than I knew my cousins back home. They were in the Iranian Navy, and I kind of liked the uniform and how people looked. So I decided, you know what the heck, I'll join the Navy because I wanted to be in the medical field and I wanted to get as much education as I could. And military at that time sounded amazing because they have the Navy College Fund, they train you, they teach you. So it was a great stepping stone for me. And also, on top of that, I wanted to give back to this beautiful country because I came here as an immigrant and I cherish and value this country. And that was a great way for me to serve in my own way and give back.
When you decided to get into the medical field, that's huge. It's a lot of different categories when it comes to the medical field. What
Yes.
specific area did you want to get into and why?
So I actually, it was a childhood dream. I wanted to be a doctor. As long as I can remember, we used to play doctor when I was kid, giving everybody shots with little mechanical pencils and playing, the doctor. And growing up, that dream never left me. So when I came to this country, I started going to college in LA and then realized that, doing this all on my own is going to be super hard, super expensive. And so I took advantage of the military offer to join and right away go into healthcare. I didn't know much about the Navy, but I had a I was blessed with a really good recruiter who helped me recognize the field that I can potentially, thrive in. So he taught me about the Corps school and how I can become a corpsman, which is pretty much equivalent to a medic in the Army or Air Force. And so that's what I did. I joined as a corpsman, as a future corpsman, and I went to Great Lakes for my basics training and core school. And that basically put me on track for the medical field where I trained and learned the basics of what it means to be a hospital corpsman. And then I got the opportunity to select what specialty field within the corpsman field I can be in. And I learned about lab technician. So I selected that, and that brought me to San Diego, California in 2001. And I went to the lab school in San Diego, which is a military school, and became a military lab technician. And I got stationed at the Naval Medical Center, San Diego, or the Balboa Hospital, and started working as a laboratory technician. And I worked in different parts of the lab, doing, typical blood work that you get at your primary care doctor. They do CBC, CMP. So I would be the one behind the scenes running those tests. I would be the one doing phlebotomy. At one point, I worked in the cytology lab where we look at tissues, like, for instance, if you had a biopsy or if something was removed via surgery from somebody, those would be sent to the lab, and we would look at them under microscope to make sure, there's no malignancy, if there's any particular diagnosis we were looking for. So that was the beginning of my journey into healthcare and working with active military veterans, working at the VA hospital, working at the Naval Medical Center. I got an amazing opportunity to be on board USNS Mercy for exercise mission. And so I got a lot of, wide range of experiences when I was in the military. They pulled me for even MP duty as a military police. And so that was all, like, in the military, they don't let you just do one thing. So you're a lab tech corpsman, but also you get to do all this other cool things. So it was an amazing time. I served on active duty for 5 years, and I was in the reserves for 3. So that's basically my military career. And I was so fortunate. I got the Navy College Fund, and that helped me with continuing with undergrad, going to UCSD, and studying for my bachelor's degree, and then from there to medical school.
Now let's go here. Let's talk about the shift because now a learning experience began to take place. You learn one art of healthcare in the military, but you also, like you said, have multiple job tasks. But now you go back into medical school, total different terminology, total different way of uh, hands-on experience, the whole 9 yards. What was the difference between the two, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, throughout my career and my life, I've missed, a part of me has missed being in the military, because you have automatically, you have built-in camaraderie. There are certain disciplines that are part of your daily routine that no employer in the civilian world really offers. For instance, physical fitness is part of the requirement for your job. So those are the things that I miss the most throughout my career as a civilian, as a student, doctor, and you can't replace that, like, honestly, with any other experience, in my opinion. So yeah, have you served in the military too?
No, unfortunately not. My brother has. I have family members.
Okay.
Yeah. So my hats off to you. Anybody that serve this country. Hey, my hats off to you. But let me go here with this. When you switch from the military life to going to school, when did the trajectory that you felt something wasn't right, that you had to basically do something that's different than what you was taught?
Yeah, that didn't come till later in my career, actually. So I dealt with a lot of trauma, growing up in Iran. I mean, I was born during revolution, I grew up during war, displacement, then immigration to the US. I suffered from survivor's guilt when I was in the military and losing, friends who got deployed. And um, I continued on with my life. I didn't realize the weight I was carrying. And on top of it, I went through a divorce and custody battle and found myself as a single mom going through medical school, going through residency training, which are the most intense times in my career and education. So after my first year of residency, basically at the peak of my career, I've made it, right? I've made it on the other side of medical school. I've made it through divorce, custody battle, just kind of made it through the toughest year of residency, which is the first year as an intern. You're literally living in the hospital. It's very stressful. And that's when my nervous system collapsed. My health, basically, my body shut down. And that really was the time when I was forced to take time off of the life I had worked so hard to build. And on the outside looking in, you think, okay, this is a successful person. She's made it, right? But on the inside, I was super depleted. I was burnt out. At the time, I didn't have the language for it, but I do now, looking back and knowing what I know now, having taken care of many patients, having been in practice for 10 years, and really taking an interest in psychology, human consciousness, nervous system health. I started recognizing how chronic stress, burnout, affects our physiology, our physical health. It can affect our hormones, it can affect our body composition, our weight. It can affect our blood pressure and how our cardiovascular system functions. So after almost a decade being in practice, I finally put two and two together. And looking back, I finally have the language to explain what happened to me and what it is that many people are dealing with. The world is full of trauma now. Everyone is dealing with some degree of trauma, whether relationship fallout, whether business fallout, whether just chronic stress from being an entrepreneur and a founder where you're working 24/7 without time off and you're carrying all the load. So yeah, it's been a very tough journey, but at the same time very educational for me because I became my own first patient.
Let me go here. You dealt with the war and things that you saw in that you was undergoing in your country prior to coming here, and you mentioned the word survival remorse and stuff. How was you able to conceal all of this internal nervous defragmentation in the military without them knowing, or at least having some indication that you're not there? I mean, how was you able to departmentalize all of this stuff to later have it resurface much later in your career?
Yeah, I became very good at just shutting my emotions down, and military does that really well. Teaches you to basically focus on the task at hand, focus on the mission. You basically learn to switch off your emotions. And it's okay while you have that one track mind and you're getting something, um, reaching a goal, for instance. But what happens is when it's chronic and over again, it builds up. And if you don't take the time to sit with what you have been through, to name what you have been through, to process the emotions, then that's when the collapse happens. That's when the burnout happens. So it wasn't something that I consciously was aware of it. It was just kind of a programming that I had adapted because I was in survivor mode most of my life, basically, because of my upbringing, the revolution, the war, and everything that happened. I just never had the consciousness to realize, look, I'm really carrying a lot. And until I basically collapsed, and then I had to look at everything and see what really had transpired and really process the emotional pain.
How many times that you, now that you look back, how many times that you actually, quote unquote, self destruct without knowing you self destructed as uh, what you was dealing with being the culprit while you was in the military and out of the military? How many times did you basically self destruct? Because it took you a while to recognize you was your first patient. So were there multiple times? And if so, what were some of those times that you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of my self-destructive patterns was excessive exercise. I had a lot of pent-up anger, a lot of emotional weight that I didn't have name for it. And I used to take it to the gym and run like crazy. Like I used to run 6 miles a day every day, and it took a toll on my physical health. I hurt my back, hurt my knees, but for me, in a way, looking back, I was coping with life and my stressors, um, with exercise. So um, sometimes, unconsciously, our body is designed for um, fight or flight, right? So to create safety, to create a way to process emotions and move, I think movement is one of the things we can do, but then it can become excessive because you have unconscious patterns that you're trying to process through, and it's like that's your outlet. So a lot of people, maybe some people take to drugs or to alcohol or to other kinds of self-destructive patterns, but that was one of my patterns was excessive exercise, and I accumulated a lot of sports injuries because of it.
Let's go here. Let's talk about the medical service, not a status versus non traditional paths, which in 2025 was one of the triggers that made you walk away. Explain that in more detail.
So yeah, non-traditional path. I mean, so I didn't when I applied for medical school, I didn't get accepted in the US, so I ended up getting accepted in the Caribbean. So I went for 2 years. I lived in the Caribbean in a very small island, a third world country. There was a lot of challenges because of resources, limited resources, even grocery store. At the time when I was a student, especially during first year, we didn't have a normal grocery store even like you would you know recognize as a grocery store here in the US. So and then with two children, both of my kids were in diapers when I started medical school. So that's what I mean by non-traditional path. And then after the 2 years of training on the island, I was in Kern County, Bakersfield for clinical rotations. I was at a trauma center, which was an amazing experience, a very challenging one, but very amazing because it's a trauma center. We got to see all kinds of cases come through, whether it was major car accidents, shootings, drug-related issues, people with chronic health issues, underserved population, prison population. So you name it, we took care of patients from all walks of life.
How did you manage to there had to be a point of exposure for you, but we won't go there yet. But how did you manage to actually deal with children, soon to get a divorce, dealing with seeing multiple trauma situations come into to play? How did this affect you as a housewife and a mother? Because we haven't really recognized. I'm gonna use this word again. You're the first patient. You haven't analyzed yourself yet. So how are you still maintaining this part? Because this is kids are now a new equation to the problem that you don't realize is a problem.
Yeah, that's the most important thing I've learned, that, when we don't address our own traumas, we end up unknowingly handing those over to our children. So it's really important to self-reflect, to look at our stressors, look at our story, look at how we relate to our life, to the people in our life, and find the best way to move forward. And my kids and I, we talk about everything, and I've taught them what I've learned in my journey, and it was challenging. I'm not gonna minimize the amount of stress I was under. I mean, studying 14 hours a day, having to take the kids to daycare, having to have hire help at home to help me with the kids, and also making time for quality time for them, to be there, to bathe them, to feed them, to be present as a mom, to read to them every night. And then, when they're asleep, then I'll go back to studying. But it was not, it was not easy by any measure of imagination. It was very challenging, and there's limited resources when it comes to being a non-traditional student or a non-traditional medical resident. There are really very limited resources to help you get through those kinds of challenges. Whereas, that's another thing, military has a really good handle on this. They take care of the families, the family members of the military members. They have resources in place, whether it's daycare, childcare, mental health, all of those things, marriage counseling. So, military, I think, has done a very good job of having those things in place for service members.
What was you mentioned survival remorse? Everybody looks at that differently. When you talk about it from your standpoint, growing up with war and hearing and seeing loved ones and family members and friends being taken from you with situations that at the time you probably don't even understand why you even at war. Um, how crucial was it for you to? How crucial was it for your family to put you in a position to have something different?
Um, I think, honestly, so my culture, we don't talk about trauma. It's it's a very kind of
Taboo,
uh what's that?
taboo.
Yeah, yeah, you don't talk about everyone is just perfect on the surface, right? You don't talk about your pain, you don't talk about your trauma, you don't talk about your hardships. And actually, me talking about these things has caused some issues within my family, and they feel like I'm way outside the box for doing that. Um, so yeah, growing up, this wasn't a thing. It's like you suck it up, basically, kind of like in the military. You just get through it. You don't, it's like a sign of weakness, if you will, if you talk about your trauma, or if something is hurting you, or you acknowledge it. So I never learned the language to express. what I was feeling and never learned the skills to process what I was feeling. So everything was just kind of like, pushed aside as if like nothing is happening. Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine. Keep going, keep going. So that was the mentality I grew up with and then was reinforced in the military and reinforced in healthcare because you just have to keep going. You have to be present for your patients. You can't, you can't be drowning in emotions. You can't, there's no time to process. Like as a doctor, so I was a ER attending at a small community hospital. So you have one patient who's basically, um, in a bad shape, and you're trying to save them. And then 10 feet away from that, you have a 3-year-old who's there with a cold or something like that, or someone else with a different concern. So you have to be able to shift from one to the next, and have that professional rapport to connect with them where they are and meet them where they are, not where you are mentally and emotionally, even though you're dealing with a lot of stress. So it just became a second nature for me to be able to compartmentalize um, what I was feeling and just putting it on the back burner and presenting my best professional, um, you know, front, I
You,
suppose.
you seem to have recognized, and this is where I'm about ready to go with this. You can't be the only one in your culture who feels this way for them to want to keep it um, almost like a hidden gem to where now you're being met with, with some type of resentment, from them. But the bottom line is why do you feel it's a need to address this now?
Well, because first of all, the world is a very tough situation, right? There's war and all kinds of economical challenges, and people on personal level have a lot of traumas, unprocessed pain. And as a doctor, I started noticing how that's affecting our health, our physical health. So chronic stress causes a chronic rise in cortisol and adrenaline, which are the fight and flight hormones. Those issues cause unwanted weight gain. They cause high blood pressure. They affect our heart rate and rhythm, affects our memory, our mood, affect our relationships, how we relate to ourselves and the world. So it became really clear to me personally because I had to do the work myself to heal from my own traumas. Um, to bring this as a gift to the world and encourage everyone to you know go to proper channels, to therapists, to psychiatrists, to coaches that can help you look at your life and heal from those traumas, because when we don't, then our nervous system gets stuck in the pattern of survival and we can't function at our highest potential.
Mhm.
Like it literally takes out the part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that is for higher thinking, creativity, decision making. It takes it out when we're under stress. And then a lot of people wonder, why can't I succeed? Why can't I get to the next level? And that's the reason. It's either a trauma issue, a nervous system issue, a physiology issue at hand that's causing downstream effects, whether it's on relationships, health, finances, business.
Let me go here with this. For years, you've been recognized as a highly functional individual, but always in survival mode. Break
Yes.
that down for me.
Yeah. So survival mode is basically, just go, 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 go. Like no time to sit and process what I was carrying. No time to acknowledge myself before all this happened. No time to recognize um, who I am underneath everything.
Mhm.
Underneath the relationship, the job, the titles, everything. Like, so when you get to a point of collapse, which I did, and then you ask the question, who am I? And what am I trying to rebuild? Because you don't want to go back to who you were, right? Because that's that version of you got you here. So where do you go from here when you rebuild?
What was the biggest obstacle for you to overcome? Because you mentioned some key things. I call them skeletons in the closet. You're dealing with, you know, coming from another country, you're dealing with war, you're dealing with loss of friends, you're dealing with people that don't want you to come and explain what you've gone through, um, raising children, divorce. I mean, that's a learning new methods of medicine. What's been the biggest obstacle for you to overcome and why?
I think the biggest obstacle was myself. I was so hell bent on just continuing doing and creating and working that I didn't take the time to look at everything that happened to process any of it. I mean, for years and years, I went to therapy, but I didn't have the language or the openness of mind and heart to really express what I've experienced. And I think that was the biggest obstacle is getting over myself.
No, I'm not gonna notes here, but you went to therapy. Did they classify you with post traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, yes, I have complex PTSD from different things that happened throughout my life. And yeah, it's been a pretty rough road, and I know a lot of people suffer from PTSD, especially veterans, um, especially immigrant population, people who are coming from places that are war torn or countries are at unrest, and they lose families, they lose loved ones. That in itself, when you're a witness from far away, which is happening right now in Iran, there's a war, the government is killing a lot of people. And so just I noticed that within not just myself, but within the Iranian community, because I have a pretty decent following on Instagram, which is dedicated page to the Farsi speaking and Iranian um, uh, people. And I noticed that a lot of us are carrying a lot of grief and trauma because of what we're witnessing happen over there. So I think it's really important that we become aware and understand the toll that this can take on our health, on our mental health, on our just life in general.
It makes perfect sense. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the E3 method and its effect on mental awareness and mental clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. So the E3 method basically stands for elevate, embody, evolve. So what I notice in healthcare, when you go to your doctor, a typical doctor's visit is only focused on your physical health in isolation. So no one's talking about the traumas you've been through or the identity you're trying to rebuild after your health challenges are resolved. So that's the bulk of my work, and my passion is to recognize everyone has a story. They're not their diagnosis. They come with a story and something that happened to them that put them in this situation now. And optimizing health, and then also recognizing who are you trying to be and how can I serve you to build the best version of yourself. And now that we have optimized your health.
Let's go here before we wrap up. You mentioned this is a two-part question. Let's start with the first question. The first question is my hats off to you because for being so transparent. Because most individuals with the word doctor attached to them would not be so opened to say that they suffer from post traumatic stress disorder or anything for fear
Yes.
of that name attached to it.
Yeah.
So my hats off to you for first of all for doing it and having that beast mindset to say you're gonna be an example of for other people. My question is how have people in your field accepted the fact that you're so transparent with making a difference both in the in the mental aspect with people, emotional and their mental state and their overall well being by doing a different approach than conventional methods, like you just said. How are you being received?
So I hope that I set an example with being transparent, hopefully lessen the stigma around mental health issues because I know a lot of physicians, a lot of healthcare providers are suffering. They're suffering from burnout, trauma, because medical care, a medical field itself in general is very traumatizing because you're holding someone else's suffering, you're holding space for someone else's suffering. And a lot of times you feel like no matter how much you try, you may not be able to, save that patient. So it leaves you with that sense of um, sadness, desperation, the sense of, helplessness in helping them. Like I've had patients who lost their lives, they came in with multiple gunshot wounds and I couldn't save them. That, I had to sit with that. So there is a lot of trauma in my field, and I know there's a lot of stigma around mental health, but also physicians are, um, uh, committing suicide at a very high rate, comparable to veterans returning from combat. So that tells you there's something wrong and we're not being transparent enough. We're not um, being helpful enough to our own colleagues and our own friends and our own people who are trying to help the patients. So my hope is that I inspire other physicians or other healthcare workers to look at their burden of trauma. I mean, there's a great study for adverse childhood events score, and it was studied extensively by Kaiser, and it clearly shows the connection between childhood adversity and physical health and illness and later in life, including a high rate of autoimmune disease. So what I did was I expanded on the ACE and I developed the AAE, which is called the Adverse Adulthood Experience Score, to help people look at the burden of the pain they're carrying, because that pain, when it's unresolved, when it's unaddressed, when it's unprocessed, it has downstream effects on not just mental health, but on our physical health.
Hmm. Let me ask this question before we wrap up. You're a doctor. I'm going to the doctor, and we have to learn to advocate for ourselves. So, with programs like the E3 method and other programs as well, what should I take to my doctors? What should be some of the questions that I need to ask my doctor to see if I'm still holding on or if my nervous system is being attacked by past, present, or future trauma? What are some of the things I need to talk to my doctor about to see if I'm in this category without always taking a so called suicide test and being administered medication. So,
Yeah.
doctor, what should I do to advocate for myself without having the only result being filling out a questionnaire board and then you're depressed, here goes some pills?
So what you're describing is the PHQ, right? It asks you if you feel, suicidal, if you've been sad, depressed, this and that. So that's later stage, right? We need to step back and use the AAE assessment, the Adverse Adulthood Experience Assessment. So that talks about, okay, have you been in an abusive relationship, or have you lost a partner, have you lost a child, have you lost a parent? As an adult, it looks at everything that has happened to you as an adult and the weight you're carrying, and how is that affecting you. How are you sleeping?
Mhm.
Sleep is a good litmus test of someone's emotional health, someone's um, trauma burden, because the first thing that goes is our sleep. We can't sleep, or we wake up. We always, our brain is always on. It's always, there's stories or conversations or rumination, or it's like a hard time to shut the brain. That tells you there's things underneath. So when you actually get to a diagnosis of depression and anxiety and PTSD, that's the tip of the iceberg. We have to look deeper and see the person's story. What happened to you?
So, a better evaluation to ask your doctor is to administer the first test to know more about who I am as a person versus the test that they give you is when you walk in. Let's see where you're at now. When you need to
Yes.
look at the whole picture to say, okay, well, after looking at your, what was it called? The A, what now? The A?
The AAE, the Adverse Adulthood Experience
Yeah.
Score.
After looking at your experience, I can see why you're feeling the way you're feeling now.
Exactly. Yeah.
You think
And that, but that augments the ACEs too. So the adverse childhood experiences score is amazing. And as medical providers, we have become data collectors. We ask these questions, but what do we do with the questions that we ask? It's like clicking in the EMR, but we don't really go anywhere with it. The most you're gonna get is mental health referral, or a prescription for anxiety medicine, or a prescription for a sleep medication. That's not enough. That's handing out band-aids.
man, I
Does that make sense?
about that. So thank you for sharing that information. And for the listeners who are listening, you need to ask your doctor to maybe administer you this test if you're feeling depressed or having these symptoms like she's talking about. You should ask for that test first and get a complete diagnostics of what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, this is not available widely in healthcare yet. I hope one day it becomes part of standard of care. It is available for free on my website at myE3method.com. You can take the test. You can download a free PDF copy of my book. You can also take the ACEs assessment, and just kind of give you a starting place of seeing where you are and how that's impacting you today.
Mm.
And then, if you need more guidance, where to go, I'm available, or you can talk to your doctor, you can talk to your therapist, your psychiatrist, and really work on resolving the trauma. Um, One of the big things that really helped me is inner child work, recognizing the little girl inside of me that became traumatized at a young age, not understanding what she was feeling and how she was feeling, and took that as an identity. And it affected me in a lot of ways. I became um, very much what, for the lack of better term, um, I one of my adaptations was to having a hard time to with conflict. Like I didn't like dealing with conflict. I didn't know how to resolve conflict, so I would just cave, and it would end up violating my own boundaries, but not really understanding where that was coming from. And it came from, being through what I went through as a child and not really learning to have a voice. So it's really important to do that kind of deep work, and really digging into your childhood, your past, and seeing how that's affecting your identity today.
You know what? Thank you so much for taking time. Not
Yeah, of course.
coming on the show and sharing a beautiful story, that beast mindset. How can the viewers once again reach out to you and know more about your programs and your methods?
Of course, I am on Instagram at drneginr, or they can go to my website, myE3method.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, click, follow, click that button. All it takes is one click to make a difference in your life or change somebody else's. This has been another, and I do mean another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast.
Thank you, Andre. I appreciate you.
All
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Remember, guys, click, follow, share. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show.